So there you have it. Kyle McCord will start against Indiana, but we'll see Devin Brown quite a bit as well against the Hoosiers as we welcome in Tony Gerdeman from BuckeyeHuddle.com. Gerd, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure. Happy to have the season back going again.
Absolutely. It's been a long off season of wondering if it'd be McCord or Brown or McCord. And I guess we've got the decision, although certainly Devin Brown is going to get a lot of playing time as well. This almost feels to me like Kyle McCord is the safe decision and Devin Brown might have a higher ceiling, but we're going to start with McCord because he's more of a known factor.
Yeah, Kyle McCord has the higher floor, if you will, and ceiling is plenty high enough, you would think, being an Ohio State quarterback chosen by Ryan Day to play the position. So I think everybody sees what or has seen or has been told what Devin Brown can do. I think maybe what has won this for Kyle McCord is the things that he does do. And he's more consistent than Devin Brown, and that has been the deciding factor to this point. But as Ryan Day has said, every time we've talked to him from the spring and the summer until now, you never really know until the game is played. And so if you don't know if you're not absolutely positive who it's supposed to be in practice, you got to find out in the game. And you would assume they'll find out in these next 3 games and then be very, very sure of who their quarterback is going into Notre Dame.
With the depth and talent at both the wide receiver, running back, and tight end positions, does it matter who the quarterback is for Ohio State?
I think it doesn't necessarily matter in terms of you don't need a world beater. You just need a guy who's going to be safe with the football and get it to the guys who, as you said, the weapons that they have. If you look at the last two quarterbacks that won national championships for Ohio State, Craig Krenzel was not a world beater. Cardale Jones was lightning in a bottle, but he was not outstanding necessarily in those 3 games. He had some very good moments, but you don't need to be the best quarterback in Ohio State history, because we've seen perhaps the 4 best quarterbacks in Ohio State history, the last 4 quarterbacks to play at Ohio State, and none of them have been the guy to lead them to a national championship.
And if you want to go back further, 1968, Rex Kern, first year as a starting quarterback for Ohio State. They won a national championship with Rex Kern and the super sophomore. So maybe having an experienced quarterback doesn't necessarily mean Ohio State will win a national championship, or maybe it doesn't mean anything at all.
Well, until Ohio State started recognizing that 1970 national championship, prior to that, back, in the last 20 years ago or so, no Ohio State team had ever won a national championship with anything other than a first-time starting quarterback. So, here we are again.
We got the quarterback question answered. We've got the offensive line question answered as well, as Buckeyes had to replace 3 starters on the offensive line, 3 guys who went on to the NFL, and there seems to be some confidence in the guys they're plugging in that offensive line now.
Yeah, and I think the good news is that this has been the offensive line since really like maybe practice 3 or 4 of fall camp. So they've had over 20 practices of Josh Simmons at left tackle, Josh Fryer at right tackle, of course, Donovan Jackson at left guard, Matt Jones at right guard, where they were last year as well, and then also redshirt freshman Carson Hinsman. So those 3 new starters on the 2 on the outside and Carson Hinsman at center, they have competed, they have been pushed, and they have held strong. And so they've gone through it, and they're going against a very good defensive line in practice. So I think what they face in the next few weeks won't be anything like what they've faced in practice, but you're still talking about 3 new guys. And Josh Simmons, the left tackle, having never played left tackle before, was the starting right tackle at San Diego State as a redshirt freshman last year. New position for him. So there's still plenty of question marks. Again, we'll see what happens during a game, but even that first game won't tell us the entire picture. But the mood of Ryan Day from the end of spring until now, he seems a much more chipper guy to talk to about his offensive line, much more confident than he was back in April.
If the big questions offensively were quarterback and offensive line, the question on defense is, can they limit big plays? Ryan Day, Jim Knowles both acknowledged that was the problem last year, and I think they were both kind of philosophical about it on Tuesday, that, well, we'll find out on Saturday how good we are at limiting big plays.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is last year we always talked about Jim Knowles and his baking in 5 big plays. It was understood, the defense, it's been designed that it's okay to give up a few big plays. There's been no talk about that from Jim Knowles this year. They're trying to eliminate that. Nothing is acceptable, basically. And so, yeah, how do they do that? Well, you just do it. And they are in year 2 of this system. And as I've said as many times as anybody will listen, this is the first time anybody on this Ohio State defense has been in the same system with the same defensive coordinator. That's for 2 years in a row. This is never, none of these guys have ever been in this situation before, to have the defense that they know, the defensive coordinator calling the plays. And Josh Proctor, this is his 6th year at Ohio State, and this is the first time he's got to experience having the same defense and the same coordinator 2 years in a row. So all that experience, that knowledge, that understanding of not just your position, but the entire role of the defense in each particular play allows them to understand why they're doing what they're doing and to get to spots faster. And they've talked all spring and all summer and fall camp about how the defense is getting their hands on more passes. And so everything seems to be going better defensively, but I think there is still a question mark about what's going on at free safety.
Speaking of that secondary, I'll ask you a simple question with perhaps a complex answer. Why all the hype over Sonny Styles?
Yeah, why all the hype? Because you know how when you're watching football and the quarterback and the center are pointing out the middle linebacker, and so that they know where he is and what he's going to do or what he might do. You might need to do the same thing with Sonny Styles, because he will be starting as Ohio State's nickelback, and that's going to be the guy who's over the slot receiver. But if there's no slot receiver, he's going to be maybe closer to the line of scrimmage. But on any given play, he can be over the slot, or perhaps he can move back to deep safety, or perhaps he might rush off the edge. He's going to be a linebacker. He's going to be all over the place, really. And from down to down, from first down to third down, you could see him in the slot. On first down, second down, you could see him on the edge, rushing the passer. On third down, you could see him back as a deep safety. So you got to figure out where he is. And, 6'4", 230 pounds, the ability to run, the ability to cover, and he is big enough to hold up against the run. There's really no down that you would need to take him off the field other than just to give him a breather. So it's hard for offenses to really figure out exactly what he's going to do, but also he is able to allow Ohio State's defense to move seamlessly against an offense going from 11 personnel with 1 tight end and 1 running back to 12 personnel with 2 tight ends and 1 running back. Offenses will try to trap some defenses with the personnel that they have. And when Sonny is out there, it's hard to trap Ohio State's defense, because he can do different things, and he can be a linebacker, he can be a safety, he can be a slot, whatever you need. So it's hard to really trap this defense in theory.
As I said, a simple question with a complex answer. You nailed it right there. Let's talk about this opponent on week 1 as they head to Indiana. You look back to 2020. 2020 is such a bizarre year for so many reasons. Indiana was a college football playoff contender. Michigan Wolverines were an also-ran. That has completely flipped as the Wolverines ranked 2nd in the nation. Indiana, Tom Allen's on a little bit of a hot seat. Yet the Hoosiers somehow always play Ohio State tough, particularly when they go to Bloomington.
Yeah, there's a fun history there, and it could be in Bloomington, it can be in Columbus. You just there's something about the Hoosiers at times, not all the time, but you never want to go in expecting to just roll over them. I think you have to go in expecting a tough game, and being on the road, an opener, anything can happen. The amount of questions that people have about Indiana with 23 new transfers in, like, what does that personnel look like? Tom Allen not naming a quarterback. Tom Allen is not even naming a starting kicker. I meant to ask Jim Knowles, how do you prepare for 2 different kickers? I didn't want to double up on my questions, so I guess they'll just have to wing it and see. But this is the kind of secrecy subterfuge that Indiana is trying, and you got to do everything when Ohio State comes to town.
Jaden Felding will be Ohio State starting kicker. That was announced on Tuesday as well, proving that in this case, Parker Lewis can lose as he lost out on the other kicking job for the Ohio State Buckeyes. 90s sitcom reference that Gerd and I got, and maybe not many other people. Let's talk finally about some of the new faces we're going to see for Ohio State. Ryan Day singled out, I believe, 4 true freshmen that he expects to play against the Hoosiers.
Yeah, and Arvell Reese from Glenville came to Ohio State as a linebacker, moved to defensive end. They'll see him on special teams. They just like his motor. Malik Hartford, safety out of the Cincinnati area, who has been impressive ever since he arrived on campus and in the winter, had strong spring. So he's going to be involved. Carnell Tate, of course, the wide receiver who Marvin Harrison Jr. a week ago said right now Carnell Tate as a true freshman is ahead of where Marvin Harrison was at this point last year when Harrison was a sophomore and was about to be the best receiver in the nation. And so those are like the first 3 names that Ryan Day mentioned. And then somebody else mentioned, well, what about Luke Montgomery? And Ryan Day's like, oh yeah, Luke is playing. The true freshman offensive lineman out of Finley. Yes, he's definitely going to play. So I'm interested to see how they work him in at right tackle. He's been working behind Josh Fryer. I do wonder how often he will see action when the game is still in doubt. Just as they want to get Devin Brown involved in the game when it is still in doubt. I'll be interested to see how they work these freshmen in there when it's 14-7 or whatever it might be.
Yeah, it was almost as if Ryan Day wasn't even considering Luke as a true freshman anymore. Early enrollee, that he's kind of already surpassed that he's going to be in the rotation at offensive tackle. Ohio State has not lost to Indiana since the Reagan administration. It would take a colossal upset for that losing streak to come to an end. I want to thank our guest from BuckeyeHuddle.com, Tony Gerdeman. Gerd, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.